Video essay questions, chapter 5. So, today we are talking about the rules of nines, which is a chart that people use when they're trying to calculate the percentage of the body that has been burnt. So, the first question says create an outline diagram of the human body and mark off various regions according to the rule of nines. So what I did was I have a diagram here and I'm going to explain what is going on in the diagram. So when you are sectioning off the body with the rules of nine, you have to understand what percentage of the body uh, is used, or how much, or what percentage, or what body part carries what percentage. So first you have to understand that the head and the neck, just the anterior, which is the front, accounts for 4.5, okay? But now the posterior, which is the back of the head and neck, counts for 4.5 as well. So if you're talking about the total front, anterior, and posterior of the head and the neck, you come up with 9%. Okay, so the anterior, the front part, head and neck, is 4.5. The posterior, which is the back of the head and neck, is a 4.5. But total, anterior and posterior, will give you 9% when dealing with the head and the neck. Okay, so then you move down to your arms, your upper extremities. Okay, so your upper extremities, which consist of your shoulders, your complete arm, and your hands. So if you're just dealing with the front part, which is the anterior, you calculate 9%. Okay, but if you're dealing with the front and the back, anterior and posterior, you have a total of 18%. Okay, so the front part of the arm, the shoulder, your arm, and your hands, just the front anterior is 9%. But if you are calculating the total anterior and posterior of your upper extremity, that's how you arrive at 18%. So now the trunk of the body. So we're dealing with the trunk of the body, okay? So if you're talking about just the anterior portion of the trunk of the body, you'll have just 18%, okay? Just the anterior. But if you're referring to the anterior and posterior portion of the trunk, you're talking about 36%. You get 18 for the front, and then you get 18 for the back, which gives you the 36% for the trunk of the body. Okay. Then we have your perineum area. So you just get a total of 1% for your perineal area. Oddball, right? But you only get 1% for your perineum area. So then we move down to your lower extremity, okay? So just the anterior portion of your thighs, your legs, and your feet. If you're just talking about the whole entire anterior of just your extremity, that is going to give you a total of 18%. Okay, but now if you dissect it, and if you're only talking about maybe half of your leg, which maybe be your thigh, that's 9%, just the anterior. But now if you calculate in your full leg, anterior and posterior, it will give you a total of 36%. And that will include the anterior and posterior of your leg, your thighs, your legs, and your feet. Okay, so one leg entirely 18%. But if you're talking about the anterior and posterior, you get a total of 36% for anterior and posterior. Okay. So now it says, what percentage of the total body surface is affected if the skin over the following body parts is burned? So A asks the entire posterior, trunk, and buttocks. So looking at the diagram, just the anterior, the posterior. So we know we're just talking about the posterior. We're not talking about the anterior. So we're just talking about the entire posterior, trunk, and buttocks. That should give us a total of 18%, because the trunk together, front and back, would give you 36, but we only want the posterior portion, which gives us 18%. Then B says an entire lower limb. So we're talking about this entire limb here, your thighs, your leg, and your feet, but we're only asking about okay, so we're talking about anterior and posterior because it acts as the entire lower limb. So that would give us 36%. Then it says the entire front of the left upper arm. Okay, so we're just talking about the entire front, so anterior of the left upper arm. Okay, so we want the entire left upper limb, and that's going to give us 9%, because we just want the front. We're not asking about the back. We just want the front, which will give us 9%. Okay. So it says you go to the beach to swim on an extremely hot, sunny summer afternoon. Describe 2 ways in which the integumentary system acts to preserve homeostasis during your outing. So we already know that the integumentary system is the largest protective organ that we have. And it will protect us out if we was in the sun. One, our body would begin to show sweat. We would have sweat. And the sweat is protecting us by cooling off our body. So that homeostasis, meaning, of course, keeping everything in line, keeping everything stable. So the sweat, our body will tell us if we're in the sun, hey, we're getting too hot, our organs are getting too hot. So it would protect us, our skin, by producing sweat glands, and we will begin to sweat. And that sweat would then cool us off to keep us from becoming overheated. Another way that the integumentary system protects us is it also keeps us from becoming dehydrated, because sometimes, or a lot of times when we're in the sun, we lose a lot of sweat because, again, the body is trying to cool itself off. But in losing that sweat, it also holds on to some of the sweat, so that way we're not dehydrated, because we don't want to get overheated. So it helps cools us off, but we also don't want to lose too much of our fluid, because then we can become dehydrated. So those are my 2 ways of describing how the integumentary system protects us if we were out on a hot summer day. All right, thank you.